Okay, so I'm super excited for this one today. I am joined by Steven Puri. Steve's been a major executive at multiple major motion picture studios, raised tens of millions in venture capital, and built startups that include both a successful exit and a couple of hard-earned lessons along the way. Excited for this? Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Enjoy. So, like, it was great meeting you. But tell us more about yourself. What would be like? What's the Stephen Puri elevator pitch? You know what I mean?
Elevator pitches, I'm one of the few people you'll meet that has been a senior executive at a couple motion picture studios, as well as raised, tens of millions of dollars of venture, run a couple of startups, like one successful exit, two failures. And it's kind of if not unique, it's a pretty rare path. So you see some things, some commonalities when you go down both those roads and you're like, okay, this is how it works.
Yeah, that's a crazy. It's a crazy path to get where we're at today. I'd love to hear more, man, because like obviously in your experience in media, you had some like pretty interesting, titles under your Rolodex and whatnot. I know we don't want to delve too much about that, obviously, but
Whatever you want. I'm here to share thoughts,
you
knowledge,
just have
time
such
to
a
kill.
Yeah, I'll put it to you like this. Of people I've had the ability to take, let's say, 3 hours of their time, you might have one of the dopest careers I've ever had or like seen, right? So,
I'm very flattered you said that. Thank you. I hope we can make one of the dopest episodes you've ever made.
like, let me ask you this question. How did you get in that position? Like, how did you get into your career out in the first place? Like, if somebody were to see you and try to like emulate you, like what would be the path?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to give you a slightly longer answer than you're probably looking for, but it might give you the context. It's like, oh, well, this is kind of that. So when you're developing a story, right?
Yeah.
Happily, luckily, I've worked on a lot of stories, often with really great storytellers, like the guys and a couple girls, but mainly the guys, that write the big movies. There are some structural things that you do when you're in film, right? It's a particular kind of story. It's different than an epic poem. It's different than a short story. It's different than a TV series, right? So in the beginning, there's a lot of shorthand you have to use to set up, like, who is this guy or girl? So at the end of the movie, people go, well, it feels like that was a plausible ending of that. Like they wrestled with something big internally. They had an external challenge and either they succeeded and it's a big success, or they never overcame their internal challenge and it's a great tragedy, right? That first act is really where the stone is thrown, right? And the audience does not have to be like master storytellers. They just have to understand life, because if that stone lands in somewhere that's fake or false or forced, the audience knows. They may use weird words to say, oh man, that's bullshit. But the bottom line is you kind of know life. You kind of know truth. So there's a great book, anyone who's interested in story, there's a great book that Cameron Crowe did that was about Billy Wilder's thoughts on movie making, storytelling, all that. And one of the things he said is, in film, third act problems are really first act problems. And by that he meant, you may do a test screening. Maybe it's for studio executives. Maybe it's for a recruited audience, maybe whoever, right? And they're going to say, oh, in the third act, I didn't believe that the thing was just, And what Billy Wilder was saying is, it's not about putting a Band-Aid on the third act. The problem is in the first act, you didn't set up the thing you wanted to happen in the third act.
Yeah.
And it's a really brilliant, succinct way of saying that. Third act problems are first act problems, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So that said, with that framing, let me tell you what I think is important here that I normally don't talk about a lot, which is my parents were both engineers at IBM.
Okay.
My mom was a software engineer. She was a coder.
Yeah.
My dad was a hardware engineer. He designed circuits, like very large scale integrated circuits, like CPUs, essentially. And I am so, as I'm getting into life and having some behind me to look at and some ahead of me to look forward to, I am so seeing the echoes of both my parents in me. So both my parents had a lot of struggle. They were born into a poverty that I will never hopefully understand, largely because they worked hard to make sure I would never know what that was like. Like, where are we going to eat again is sometimes a question, right? I know my mom, when most of her family died in a fire when she was very little, and she ended up supporting her mom when she was like 14.
Yeah.
So in Brooklyn, she would watercolor postcards and just stand on the corner to sell them for money for food, right? I've never had to do that, but it tells you a lot about my mom's resilience, where she was not in an orphanage. She was with her mom, who was at home and doing the only thing she could figure out to do at 13, 14 years old to make money, right?
Yeah.
And it also says that she had an artistic bent. Like when I was little, she was the one who was like, oh, you know what? You're doing a book report. Let's make a beautiful cover for it, right? She had that skill, which is really great that she was creative in that way. And I have loved working with great creative people in
Yeah.
my adult life now, probably because they're echoes of mom was someone who could create something out of nothing.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're
And
saying.
that's cool. And I dig that, man, you know? And my dad, very different. My dad came over here, $146 in his pocket, took a Greyhound bus to the University of Illinois, studied electrical engineering, worked really hard, right? Lived in the YMCA during college, sent money home. He would, on weekends, sell Collier's encyclopedias door to door, sent that money home to his parents so they could build a house to live in. So, like, they both had this, like, you got to make something of yourself mentality and not a, hey, man, just give up kind of, life's hard, way of thinking. And so I didn't really know my dad very well when I was little.
Yeah.
My dad's responsibilities were to go and make money. I
Yep.
remember he would help me check my math homework, my science homework, stuff like that. But I would often leave it out when I was finished at night. He would get up early in the morning, and at my spot at the breakfast table would be my homework with notes on it. That was about the level of my interaction with my dad until my mom died right around college, just after college. I don't really remember a conversation with my dad before then,
Yeah.
which is weird, right? So I tell you all that to say, I know there are some things about my mom and how she had to be resilient, but also had creativity that's absolutely in my life now, right? It's why I've loved working with great storytellers, also with great designers now, UI, UX designers. And my dad's an engineer. He has a very specific mentality around, there are binary answers in many cases, and you work hard to break things down to first principles so you can understand that. Don't get confused by the forest, examine each tree.
Yeah.
And so that really launched me. More than my career, that really launched me, that sense of like, here are the two foundational people in your life. Because when you're little, your parents are like gods. Like often if you look at the mythology we have, the Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, we all know with, Hera and Juno and, Poseidon and, Zeus and all this stuff. In many ways, that is just our collective way of understanding like the powerful figures from when we're a child. They were my gods when I was little, and my mom died when I was, young. And my dad's still here. He lives down the block. We moved here to be close to him. And yeah, so that's kind of what set me on a certain path. It was like, hey man, work hard, like make something of yourself.
So like an interesting blend of like almost, if you allow me to say it, like tech, or like let's say like let's say technology competency, creative capacity, but also just like that hustler's nature, like that just like you gotta, you know what? That's like the pure story of the American dream, right? Like at the end of the day, living in a meritocracy. So like, I appreciate you telling me that. That gives me a bit more like a color on your background.
Yeah, that is where I come from. And that is the lens through which I see the world. Like my mom was raised here.
Yeah.
She was by descent French English, like many generations ago. And my dad is, I think, what you call a first generation immigrant, and that he was the one who immigrated from India.
Yeah.
I think I'm second generation, like half immigrant or whatever you want to call it. But in a sense, almost all of us are immigrants here. Like we are not the natives of North America.
No,
you don't need to go into that, but yeah.
I totally get that. And I resonate with that a bit as well too. My father actually was an engineer. We came over here from Kenya, 1999, right? So like I'm not even first generation. I'm an immigrant, right? Like I've been naturalized in Canada, whatnot, but I totally understand that, having like those parents very stern. Dad goes to work, comes back home, just got to make sure you're doing well in school.
Yep.
Mom is
100%.
like with her own challenges as well too, right? So like, I definitely get that. So is that basically like what angled like your career? I know, well, obviously it is, because you mentioned you really enjoy working with creatives, right? But like, how did you find your entry into? Well, no, we don't even really talk to the most about that, but like, I just wanted to hear more about like how do you get into like your roles and whatnot?
I'll tell you. So my life is a series of incredibly lucky things that dropped to my lap. And I'd like to believe coupled with me working really hard to make something of them. It's like, oh my God, this happened.
Yeah.
Wow. I am very fortunate in this regard. Okay, let's go dig in and make a name for myself in this. So I came to the University of Southern California. And while I was there, I had a lot of friends because it is arguably the best cinema TV school in the world, right? So a lot of friends were in cinema TV in the dorm. So, you had a lot of creative conversations, a lot of Tuesday nights, let's go out and see this movie and go to a diner and debate it until 2 a.m, sort of stuff that you do, right? So that was fun, developing a vocabulary and a love of film. And I, of course, had an engineering background. Like I was a Watson Scholar from IBM, which meant I had a job at IBM whenever I wanted it to make money. So during school, I worked at IBM to make cash as a junior software engineer, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. And that turned into being in the right place at the right time. When I was getting out of USC,
Yeah.
computers became powerful enough
Yeah.
to manage film.
Yeah.
So suddenly you had the rise of the nonlinear editors. Instead of having, flatbeds with reels of 35 or 70 millimeter film on them and editors with, razor blades, suddenly Avids were cutting film and Pro
Yeah.
Tools was doing sound. And then
Yeah.
Silicon Graphics came along and they were like, we can actually make a whole image and it looks kind of good at film resolution. And that was amazing for my career because I sat at that weird intersection of I spoke engineer, but I also
Yeah.
spoke creative.
Exactly. And that's sort of what I was trying to get to, because I didn't know, but I did not know about your family history. So it's really cool how well it correlates with your career. That's super awesome, right? Yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense now, and it makes a lot of sense. So I guess, like, obviously being in the position you're in, and again being able to speak engineer, and also being able to speak the word, well, to speak well. Period. Let's put it like that. You're a great communicator. I'll say that right
Oh,
now.
thank you.
Oh, you're a wonderful
I
communicator.
speak the English real good.
Yeah, no, but even the way you said, like, positioning, right? Like, being, I'm a sales guy, right? So I understand that then I understand the value proposition of storytelling, and like you
Mhm.
said, the third act being the first act. So you want to be able to angle the conversation in a way that you sort of see possibly like where the conclusion is going to be, right? Like I definitely get that as well too. What I was going to say is, so in your position though, right? Especially when you became more so focused on investing and whatnot, I'm assuming you probably had like very a very unique perspective on, let's say, like the world of tech, and especially when you're getting involved, probably the emergence of new companies, and sort of the evolution of how that went. Because I know you're mentioning that part of the reason why you're interested in talking more or having this conversation is legacy, and having more so like a nuanced conversation on these technology companies, since you've been able to have a bit more of like a unique perspective that, let's say, the on the street guy, or like the retail investor may not.
Yes, I'll pick up on I think where you're going with that, which
Yeah.
is I do have a very strong thesis that all of us have something inside us, something great that we could express. And the question of this lifetime is, are you going to get it out or not? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And the thing that I find criminal, and as I've talked before, I'm really focused on this, is I'm going to have a son in like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a daughter in like 24 months. And I'm thinking a lot these days about how am I influencing the world that they're going to live in? How am I putting 1% of good into that world that they're going to inherit when Laura and I will be gone? And there are enough forces in the world right now that are working to make sure that people are not healthy mentally, physically, spiritually. And man, that gets me going. I view that as a criminal act. And it is amazing watching Mark or some of these guys testify in Congress, or Nick Clegg. I mean, how much money they pay him to just become a stooge? He had a decent reputation before, and then he just became a well-paid liar for Facebook. And it's just to watch them tell these lies and get away with it. It's really, it hits me differently than it ever has. It's always been a huge problem for me. But then the thought of, and this is the world that my kids and their friends are going to grow up in. Wow.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I really appreciate about the conversation we had last time is that I feel like Gen Z's, and it's Gen Alpha, right? Like I ran for Gen Z's,
Yeah.
and younger millennials, we're pretty aware, of some of the issues with like the tech infrastructure that we're operating in, right? Like we know that it's unhealthy. We know there's parts of it that are sort of incorrect, but there's no actual written explanation as to why that is, right? You just sort of have the vibe, right? Like we're the vibe generation, right? And I really like the fact that you're able to say specifically, no, 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 no. That's like this right here, this event happening, this, like Nick Clegg getting hired, saying that this is incorrect. It allowed for this to happen. That's why you feel this way about this, right? And I think like just as you were saying before, putting actual English to the problem really helps us conceptualize things. And I think, as you're saying, like, what are you going to leave for your kids? If it's a manuscript of like how to move forward, I think that's great. And if that just starts with like writing things down or just acknowledging some of the issues that are happening, I think that's like a really great first step, right?
It is. And I'll tell you, I don't want to take credit for a lot of these thoughts because there are so many people who have also been inside the sausage factory that
Yes.
have talked about, what's in the sausage and how does it get made. And it's
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right? But I do feel passion. As you know, that's what I do with my life now, is just to help people go, I want to reclaim my attention.
Yeah.
I have something to do. And what's interesting, I think, and this is to pull back and be a little sociological for a moment,
Yeah.
right? I'm going to put this out there as something I believe. People may differ with this, but I do believe that there is an emotional return. There is a positivity you feel when you do something and you know it is of value.
Yeah.
Now, of value may mean you got paid to do it. It may mean you influenced people a lot. You inspired people to do something great. It may mean, it was a beautiful piece of art, but you somehow did something of value. It feels good. It's not only that, you got paid, right?
Yeah.
So return something to you. So when you think about a child, right, when they've graduated, I'm not an expert in child, developmental psychology, but when they've graduated to this stage of they understand their actions have an effect on others, right? So they're not crawling anymore. They're not a toddler, but they're starting to get like that early sense of what I do seems to affect mommy and daddy or someone else in my preschool or whatever that is, right? You start to get a sense of like, well, what is it I should do? I have agency now. I realize I can throw my toys or I can go for a walk or I can, do whatever the thing is. I throw my spaghetti on the ceiling, right? But you start to get a sense of, oh, wow, okay, so I take actions and there are effects of those actions. So when you look at how do you do the thing that hopefully makes you feel good,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
I personally don't believe people actually are happier being lazy or being useless. I don't think it's actually true. I do think that people can be trapped in a cycle of hopelessness,
Yeah. For sure.
and, having gone to USC, like, yes, USC is in an urban neighborhood. Some of my friends were not going to USC. They just lived in the neighborhood. And it was interesting hearing their division of the future, where there was like, oh, there's the future for you guys going to USC, where you're going to be bankers and lawyers and, studio executives and that.
Yeah.
And the future for me is like, I might get a football scholarship. I might get a basketball scholarship, that sort of thing. I'm not going to get from my high school into the upper echelons of chip design,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you have it, and that can lead to a feeling of hopelessness when you're like, well, these futures aren't available to me. They're just not. From where my rocket is being launched, I'll never hit that place, right? And it's interesting at the other end of the spectrum, because at US, there are a lot of what are called, now NEPA babies. We call them trust fund kids. In other words, the people who know that their parents are going to give them generational wealth, and ultimately, like, if they don't do anything, they're still going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
There is also some really awful, mental problems and behaviors on that end because they don't necessarily have to do anything. So you have like either end of the spectrum, whether it's hopelessness or whether it's, I don't actually have any drive to do anything because I don't need to. Both of them have problems, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the middle, you often have people who do feel, oh, you know what? I could be the next blank. I could do, this sense of like, if I work hard, I'm kind of living in this middle class. And it's interesting how the middle class is kind of being hollowed out in this country. You have this polarization of wealth, and you see the people at the top end who are absolutely changing the rules of the game to ensure that they have more wealth, and often in ways that are, let's say, ignoble,
Yeah.
taken from the poor.
Yeah.
That's, I'm sure, hoping that something that's a great leader comes up that inspires us to move forward in a way that doesn't turn to eventually there's just a revolution.
See, like, here's the thing. You might have more faith than I do there.
You know what? I'm having kids. I'm trying to be hopeful here.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think there's some positive things about America I can talk about specifically because I'm in Canada, obviously, to make that clear again, too. And I think there's some of the
You're in
interest.
Ontario, right?
Yeah, in Ontario. And I
Yeah.
find it interesting that some of the concepts that people talk about politically in the US are they talk about them like like, let's say, like, hey, in a fearful context of like, hey, let's make sure we don't do this, otherwise this is going to happen. I find that's already happening in Canada. So for example, like the conversation of the death of the middle class. If you look at Ontario, like I'm an econ nerd, right? Close to 30 to 35% of Ontarians are employed by the public sector, right? So right, so and then the private, there's the Canadian economy was small business, but small business basically died, right? So essentially, the only one who's really like earning income at this point is people who are part of the public sector, or let's say public sector adjacent private sector entities, right? And I also have been in a background where when I first got out of school, I was in financial sales, and I sort of understood what was happening from a macroeconomic perspective, right? And I understand why the middle class is being hollowed out, right? That's the other part of it too, as well. Like, not to get too much into the weeds of it, but like we've been propagating, or we've been kicking down like the financial can since 2007, yada, yada, yada. For whatever reasons, things have had to be deregulated. Assets have increased in value. That's made cost of living extremely expensive for a lot of people, basically pushing people down while increasing the net worth of asset holders, right? So like in Ontario, you really see that. Like I was saying before, generally like our housing market is disgusting. Like it's the best way to put it. Like I will never, no, like no one will ever be able to earn a house purely off of their income, right? I think it's like, I forgot the ratio, but it's like if you need to earn like north of like 500,000 per household to be able to afford like the average median household within the GTA, which is ridiculous, right? Obviously.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like it's funny because when I hear people in the US talk about, hey, the death of the middle class, I'm like, I live in Ontario. I'm literally seeing it happen. Because the other part of it too is like my generation, specifically millennials, is seeing the largest percentage of what's the word I'm looking for here? Emigration, not emigration. So like leaving the country, right? I'm like, there's a
Yeah.
significant brain drain happening here where there's a lot of Ontarians that have been educated at all these schools in South Central Ontario that are leaving to go to other places in the world because, the private sector is not facilitating their expensive degree, which is super unfortunate, right? So like I definitely understand. So what I'm saying here, just to bring things back, right?
Mhm.
I totally agree with you. I see the polarity of, let's say, wealth, or polarity of wealth it's been getting out of hand, right? And like the unfortunate part about that is like that story is also being enveloped in the story of tech advancing at the same time too. And so from a commercial perspective, like being in sales, like I understand that story as well too, because basically it's like we need to figure out how to sell things better. We have these technological applications that allow us to distribute information much easier, right?
Yeah.
And like the interesting thing is that there's almost been like this, being in sales, it's like almost like I've seen this significant change in behavior, like human behavior. Because when I first got out of school and I was doing sales, you had to literally call people and like beg to get this guy's information. Like, but hey, I sell this. Who would I talk to about buying like X?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then like you have to just this crazy phone game of like finding the right person and then calling them enough to beg them for their email, setting up blah, 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 whatever. Now that's completely changed. Like the nature of sales is completely changed because now we have these phones that are data aggregation platforms. And that's basically what I was trying to say. Thank you for allowing me the ability to run at this point now, right? Is that what a lot of people don't understand, what specifically our generation doesn't understand, is that these are data aggregation platforms. And the way that data
Mhm.
is used is disgusting, to be quite frank, right? But
Yeah.
from a commercial perspective, I understand it, right? Because at the end of the day, I need to be able to get data on my ideal customer profile, figure out how they think, and then create messaging for them beforehand. So even to turn back to what you're trying to say, like right now I'm really into like ABM, right? So like account-based marketing, which all that comes down to is like you buy these lists of names that's basically stalking people that you want to stalk. And then you figure out like what they think, what they do, and you create content that's designed to be engaging to them. And then after I create that content, I literally send it to them via platform, like linked, all the major platforms have these ad programs that allow you to do that, right? So like LinkedIn, Meta, all of these things, right? So I will send this ad to you that I know you will like engage with because I've already had all this research on you in the first place.
Yep.
And like like, the conversation we had last time was interesting because you just have so much of a better perspective on like some of the issues that are happening in this space. Yeah, and that's like I would love to chat a little bit more about that as well too, because I find that's
Well,
a on conversation. Yeah,
here's the most painful part for me because I don't know how this gets solved, which is people don't seem to care.
exactly.
You can have a conversation where you and I lay out like, here are things that the data aggregators are doing,
Yeah,
and they're going to have these effects on you. And ultimately, people, they can nod, they can agree with you, but their behaviors don't change. They go right back to, but I want to be in my Facebook. I need my TikTok. I need to get on Twitter and rage tweet at people and tell them how much I hate them and how stupid they are. It just makes me feel better. And you're like, yeah, and those platforms, no, they are designed to inflame because they know it leads to engagement. I don't know how that changes. It's a huge problem where it's like, how do you help someone that doesn't want to be helped? And you and I can go over example after example of just like heinous stuff. When you drag it into the light, you're like, wow, that's astounding. And Facebook, Meta, whatever, Mark wants to call it now to try and hide from the Cambridge Analytica thing. It's like, he's so comfortable now. He puts it in his quarterly reports. Like, they're like, hey man, here's what we're doing now with ad targeting. We let advertisers like target teenage girls that delete their selfies and call themselves fat. We just sell that list of beauty brands. You want to advertise to Odie's daughter? If she thinks she's fat and ugly, you're just give us money. We'll advertise to her. And it's like, they're not even hiding anymore. They're like, hell yeah, man, shareholder value. I got to sell more ads,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's a dad.
But it almost goes back to what you were trying to say when you're in university, those two streams of people, like those stream of people that were like bankers, business owners and whatnot. And there was, let's say, I don't want to say there was everyone else. I'm just going to say for the context of this conversation, right? And like the unfortunate part is that like I sort of understand, like I feel like I'm a cog, so I feel dirty because like when I hear that story, like I understand why Meta is publishing that story because they're like, as a marketer, if you're smart, this is a great data point. Like this is like the fact that we know this is crazy. You want to know this information, you'll pay a lot of money for that. Like, so it's like we're in this post morality era that's like of a return back to feudalism. And the disgusting part about it too is like the relationship a lot of these companies have with the government, like you're mentioning, right? So the reason why they're even able to get to this point is the lack of regulation. And that's happened because there's this quiet, becoming less quiet, like relationship that these tech companies have had with administrations over the X amount past of years that have allowed this to happen and proliferate. And that's the one thing I've always found fascinating, specifically in the US, right? Because like this started basically with Obama. Because I remember Obama was talking about he was the Facebook president, right? So like essentially like this relationship of like understanding tech companies have access to people that we want to have things to do things that we want them to do, right? That's been going on for quite some time. Um,
Yeah. I wish that I had an idea or I had read someone who had a great idea here
yeah,
because so many people have hung a lantern on what the problem is and where it leads. And yet no one has been able to even come up with a solution. And like you said, money talks. So it's like the people who could be regulating this have gotten incredible incentives from the social media companies to not handle it well,
yeah.
you know?
And it's actually like in the context of AI, it actually scares me because I feel like there's this level of irresponsibility as well too. Because it's not like the government is allowing these companies to self-regulate or do whatever they want because they're benevolent, like these great moral like titans of like what I like that's not the case at all. And I know recently there was an issue in the EU with like GDPR where now they're like allowing backdoor access to all messaging applications, so like you have to de-encrypt, and they're moving to this mass movement to like mass de-encryption, and basically just like publicization of like private data, right? And all the tech companies are just going with it because it's almost like what.
Well, I don't think you're right there. If you recall, there was in the past week or 10 days, visits to the White House by both Zuckerberg and Tim Cook, right? And Tim Cook gave him that little piece of glass with the gold thing. And Zuckerberg kept his visit quiet. Zuckerberg's visit leaked out after he was there, right? He went quietly. And as you recall, Apple that week wanted the EU and the UK not to force them to have a back door.
Yeah.
And isn't that weird? Like right after Tim Cook was there, the EU said that we will drop that, right? Well, Trump is like twisting the screw with tariffs and all this stuff. Tim Cook said, hey, man, listen, because, Tim's a great supply chain guy. He's not an innovator. He's not a visionary. He's a guy to just like, he's almost like a glorified accountant to just like, let me continually manage, which is why we have like the iPhone 19 and the stuff launched on his watch, the Vision Pro, the Home Pod, it just bombs, right? It goes fucking nowhere. Right. So, but it's amazing that Steve Jobs created so much momentum in that company
Yeah.
that, 14 years later, they could still be making money off the stuff from his era, right? Tim got a free pass to cruise, and it's only in the past year or two that people realize the emperor has no clothes. Tim doesn't have an AI company. Isn't it amazing? If you told someone 5 years ago, Apple is going to go to their biggest competitor named Google and ask Google if they could make the AI for their products, you'd be like, hell no.
Yeah.
And that's exactly where Tim is. He's like, I got nobody. I've lost all the smart talent. I'm doing it. So you have Zuckerberg going there. So what you were just talking about with the EU,
Yeah.
that went away. They're just like, hey, man,
I missed
they could pay Trump enough money through his meme coin or whatever it is, donations to his super PAC, that he's like, hey, by the way, you know what? I need this. Zuckerberg was here. He gave me $1 million in meme coin. I need you to, let him keep WhatsApp encrypted or whatever, right? And of course, they share WhatsApp data between Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, but he doesn't want anyone else in his little garden of data.
to have that. But then the other interesting thing though is like so, and maybe you can probably correct. Well, this because there's two things I want to ask. The first one, I said, let me focus on that first. Then I'll come back to the other one. The first one is like, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to hear more about your perspective in Tim Cook doing that, and like why. Like the reason why I'm asking is like, do you think this is more so of like a decision, like a forced decision of like, hey, we're getting so far behind in AI that we have to,
Yeah.
have this.
I don't think there's even debate about that. I think Tim Cook in an honest moment would say, yeah, kind of.
And but I almost want to like it's almost like okay, like I understand like the lack of comparative competency to Steve Jobs, but is there a reason why Apple was like AI? Maybe we should not be getting fully invested in this right now in comparison to, because that's like a significant decision because being one of the major tech companies, considering how much like how head first every other company's gone in with AI, right? Like I almost wonder why was that decision made to be like, no, we're not going to do our LLM and like launch that as a website. Like
How old is Eddie Q?
how old?
You should look it up. Who, Johnny Ive, better or worse, is gone. Scott Forstall, better or worse, is gone, right? So,
60 years old.
right. How old is Tim Cook?
64. Okay, I see where, yeah. Like,
Okay. So
yeah,
you had Apple doing iPod, iPhone, iPad, iMac, right?
yeah,
15, 20 years ago.
yeah,
And establishing standards like, hey, man, this is great. And you could just say, oh, with the iPod, well, the Zune came first, right? It's true. There were MP3 players, but they did a great job of making the Apple version of it, right? Apple is rarely first to the party,
yeah,
but they usually do a fantastic job of it,
yeah,
right? And they used to make hardware that was amazing. Now they make the HomePod, the Vision Pro, you know what I mean? Okay, God bless. So they've lost the thread.
yeah.
But the thing is, it wasn't obvious to the consumers for 10 years because Apple was doing things to cover it over. For example, under Steve Jobs, guess how much money Apple spent buying back its own stock?
Oh yeah, that was a huge. Was this like 200? I forget that for the number. What was it?
No. Steve Jobs was like, money goes into innovation.
Yeah,
Do not buy back your own stock. The
yeah,
reason you buy back your own, just to understand, like from the C-suite point of view, by buying back your own stock, by using what could be dividends or retained earnings you do something with, right? By buying back your stock, all you're saying is, okay, I will decrease the number of shares out on the market, which means the share price will go up. So as a chief executive trying to hold on to your job, you want to be able to say the stupid thing of like, well, the share price is up 14% this year, like sort of thing, right? So what's the easiest way to do that? Because innovation's hard.
yeah,
Better advertising is hard.
yeah,
Easiest thing is, hey man, we have like $30 billion this quarter left over. Just buy our own stock, which will goose the share price. And what has Tim Cook done the entire time he's been?
he's bought back stock. Yeah, it's
Right. What's the thing he hasn't done?
innovated at all.
Exactly. But the thing is, there was so much. Imagine like you're driving a semi truck. So in
Yeah,
2011, you inherit a semi truck and it's doing 80 miles an hour down the freeway.
yeah,
For a while, no one notices the semi truck has no engine. You've sold the engine, right? But when the wheels start to slow down and you put the gas pedal down and nothing happens, then people start to go, oh, what happened? And the problem is not when you hit 30, 20, 10 miles an hour, like right now at Apple.
right now,
The
yeah,
problem was back when you sold the engine. That's when the problem happened. The effect is being felt now. There's no AI strategy. There are no new products. There's just squeezing every bit of juice out of like the iPhone product. That's their
yeah,
number one source of income. The thing is what, 20 years old?
yeah,
Yeah. So Tim's a fantastic supply chain guy, but it's almost like saying like, I have the smartest accountant running NASA. And you're like, but shouldn't NASA be innovating? Like,
yeah.
really? Do you want an accountant running NASA? I don't know.
It's just questionable. What's your long-term outlook on Apple in comparison to the other tech companies?
Well, my wife worked there, so sadly she has a bunch of stock and I don't think we're going to sell it right now, but I can tell you all of our friends who have been in Apple are gone. The ones who were just like, oh, these are our smart friends. They've all gone. there's no inspirational reason to be there anymore. And it's a very siloed company. I don't mean to just beat up on Apple, but it's like there are a couple tech companies we've either worked for or we have really good friends that have been inside. It is not the early 2000s, there was an era of like, oh my God, when Steve would walk on stage and be like, and another thing, and pull out and this thing, you go, that's an amazing invention of the tablet. That is
Yeah,
an amazing execution of this thing, or even with services, it was like iTunes, where it's like, okay, great. Like I'm old enough to remember CDs. I remember buying a CD,
yeah. Buy my mixtape.
Right. I'm just saying, like, it was an incredibly bad value proposition where the labels would say, "Hey, man, there are 2 or 3 tracks you want, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna package them with 10 tracks you don't want. I'm gonna charge you $15." And you're like, "Oh, I really want those tracks," you know?
Yeah.
And eventually consumers were like, "Oh, there is a way to vote that's not fair? Hell yeah, bring me LimeWire, bring me Napster, bring me," you know? And it was just their way of saying, "Oh, I'm gonna show you. You've held our feet to the fire this long.
Yeah.
When there's another one that's maybe ethically a little gray,
I'll take it.
I'm totally down to do that because I don't think you're operating in a better place, right?" And then Steve was like, "Hey, how about 99 cents a track?" And
There
he
you
pulled it
go.
off.
Yeah.
Right? What has Tim Cook done? What has Tim Cook done? Anything close to that revolutionary? The HomePod? Hey, man, I made a speaker? What?
It's funny because I've never really thought about that, and you're right. Like I feel like the Apple itself is put on such a pedestal because people do love the iPhone, right? I personally, like,
Yeah.
in my mind, when I think about it, it's like, oh, like the iPhone is really great even at like data integrity. Like I feel like safer on the iPhone or something like that. Like, I'm not gonna get viruses. Like my information is not gonna get stolen as easily. Like they do a better job of trying to make sure my data is like secure. That's like
Okay.
what I think.
You have access to Google search, right? The exact same month that Tim Cook wanted to create his advertising business. As you remember, like Apple got into advertising and all that, right? And they said, for privacy reasons, we need to cut off the ability for these other ad platforms to do tracking, right? I remember like Zuckerberg was like, "Oh my God, that's like our Facebook entire business is ad cookies and tracking and pixels." And Tim Cook, who was launching a competing product, hid behind, well, it's for the privacy of our customers, right? Google this. The exact same time he was doing that, Tim Cook, who was looking for growth, needed to get into China. And China, the Chinese government, said, "You can't operate iCloud here unless you give us the keys to the servers and you use our servers." And Tim Cook was like, "Not a problem. All good, dude." And they kept that super quiet. So Tim is talking out of one side of his mouth here, going like, "Well, we're all about privacy, da da da." And the other side of his mouth, he's like, "Oh, so to get the Chinese market, I just need to give you the server keys, and we use the government servers in China for iCloud in China."
There you go.
Great, sign me up. You
Right?
know?
That's yeah. No, that's just, that's classic Tim Cook. Honestly, it's unfortunate because that's the story of all the tech companies when they go to China too. Elon did the same thing too. He doesn't talk too much about it. He doesn't talk too much about his relationship with China and G and whatnot and the party itself. But like, yeah, he had to get very friendly, very buddy with a lot of like not even just like a lot of key stakeholders in the party. You know, right? So it's
Correct.
that's always an interesting and like yeah, that it's rules for thee and not for me because obviously like we're not allowed in the Chinese market, but all their products are freely allowed here, right? Um, and that's another.
I don't think we can even get a Chinese car here.
Well, that's because the car manufacturers are basically a cartel, you know, like they're not. It's,
I don't know. I'll tell you this: we just came back from a week in Munich,
yeah,
and the BYD cars, the people that our friends that own the BYDs, fucking love them.
yeah. I've heard they're good products. I've heard they're amazing products.
They're you know, even was it Farley, the head of Ford, the CEO of Ford? He
Yeah,
had a BYD brought over, and he drove it for 6 months. He's like, "It's so far ahead of what we do in this country." But of course, Elon wants some protection because he's like, "My cars aren't actually that good," you know?
yeah. Well, yeah, they're not. Well, to be honest, like North American cars in general, just the way it's that itself is an interesting history and like its relation to like wartime, like U.S. and like how they contributed to supply chain from that perspective, and because of that, they don't allow like any new car to get in. Like, there's a story of like the original electric car, or I thought that wasn't it. Wasn't there another story too of like there was a car and it either had like the windshield wiper or was a seatbelt. I forget what it was, but that was a big like story about that, right? Where like some guy made a car and the feature of it was either I forget, it was either like a wiper or a seat. I forget which one, and he basically got like vaporized.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know that story, but it sounds
Okay, so I
interesting.
shouldn't just talk out the side of my face, but like, yeah, no, there, I have to figure out exactly what it was, but like, there was a story. Hold on, honestly, is like, it's gonna take too much to like search right now, but like, yeah, like, what I'm trying to get to here is like the auto manufacturers in North America are set up in such a manner that they do not allow other people to get in, or there's basically huge like red. There's a lot of red tape. So even getting the Asian manufacturers in, right, like that was a huge issue, and like that's why.
Yeah.
And like they were that's why now it's like they have to be manufactured in like Canada and then built in the States, right? Like that
Yeah.
whole was super interesting.
Yeah. And one of the things that only a few politicians talk about is when we complain about manufacturing going overseas, it is not that there are so many Americans who want to do those jobs because everyone's looking up the ladder. Like how do I get that guy above me's job?
Yeah.
They're not looking down at this. And like Tim Cook, when pressed on this recently, not to, talk about Tim too much, but he's repeatedly had to say, like, hey man, we couldn't make an iPhone here.
Yeah.
Go find me people who are going to do these menial jobs of screwing tiny screws into circuit boards all day long, and tell me how much the union's going to charge me to do that, because they're not going to do it as cheaply as I can get it done overseas. So Trump puts a tariff on China. What does Tim Cook do? He said, okay, well, the iPhones are going to go to the United States. Let's make those in India, and we'll use the Chinese lines, for other countries, right? And it's this thing of him saying, like, I can't get North Americans who are going to make iPhones that are affordable.
Yeah.
You just don't want those jobs. So that's the problem with, like, once a nation reaches a certain level of success, the kind of jobs we complain about are going overseas. I certainly don't want my children, like, you ever watch like those guys that tear down the cruise ships in Bangladesh and
Oh
stuff?
yeah, it's like the most dangerous
It's like,
job.
we're not going to do that in this country. Are you kidding?
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, those jobs got shipped overseas. Yeah. Do you want one? No.
See, Gen Z kids are like power drills, just trying to put that stuff down.
I know.
That's not gonna happen.
Go travel to the countries that we're complaining about.
Yeah.
And tell me what American is like, oh yeah, I want to do that job.
Yeah. It's just not, it's not happening. It's unfortunate. It's almost like Great Gatsby, like that scene where they go through like the wasteland, the manufacturing wasteland and whatnot.
Yeah.
No, I totally get that. This is what I wanted to touch on before too. So the interesting thing, because we're talking about China and like the way that they have a gated access for tech companies, right? The interesting thing though, right? So I think when did the whole Snowden thing happen? Was that 2007 or no? That was like 2009, right?
It's so long ago I couldn't tell you what year, but yes.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about the Snowden story for me, anyhow, was relationship between the government and major tech companies in the U.S. Because the whole idea of it was like release a whole bunch of documents, but one of them was Prism, right? And Prism's whole thing was an NSA project, essentially to work with like Yahoo, Google, I think it was Facebook at the time. Maybe I don't want to name ones that weren't there, but to essentially create backdoor routes, right? To allow the government to access information, right? And I always found that story interesting, and how people detested Edward Snowden, because that story basically just revealed the relationship the government has with tech companies, right? And I always find it funny that, like, I feel like I'm a Snowden nerd, but like that's even not revisited more, and because there was even like another release about like the cable, because there's like this internet cables that go through the U.S. So the NSA put like a fiber optics filter to like harness all the data, so like they have access to all the data going through the like internet pipelines to the U.S., right? At the time, they couldn't do anything with it. There's too much data to do stuff with that, you would think, right? But I feel like now with applications of AI, I wonder where that story has gone. And again, that's why I'm trying to say it's very interesting that you don't see that story revisited. Because like I could just think about like the amount, like right now, I love using ChatGPT for a lot of things, but I could imagine the insights you can get from getting all that data, and even the commercial insights, right? From having access to all that data and then just being able to figure out like the best things to sell, or just being able to actually consume and produce like things from that information, right? And I'm sure that's happening now, but again, not spoken on too strongly.
Yeah, I think you and I agree on many levels, and I'm sure there are, some of your audience that are listening that are like, yeah, man, I kind of get that. But the unsolved thing is, how do you change it when most people can be confronted with this? And they're just like, yeah, but it's so fun to be in Instagram, and it's hard. I really hope that my kids' generation looks at our generation with social media the way I look at my dad's generation in smoking. Where, I mean, it's just unthinkable. Like, none of my friends smoke. We look at my dad's generation, we're like, how could you do that? Like, half your friends died of lung cancer. You have emphysema. Like, how could you possibly do this thing? There's just poison, and do it all the time. My dad, when he quit smoking, he was up to 2 packs a day. And that's serious. I mean, that's like lighting one when one's going out. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
literal chain smoking.
When you think about, their generation, they're like, but all the movie stars were doing it. The cool guys were in the movies smoking, James Dean and Humphrey Bogart, and they're all the studies the tobacco industry did on how tobacco is healthy for you. And now we've got Nick Clegg and Sheryl Sandberg and Zuckerberg promoting how great, Facebook's about grandparents seeing grandchildren's photos. And I sure hope my kids look at our generation and are just like, how did you guys waste your lives? So we'll see. Maybe they get smart. Maybe something happens. I just don't know what it is.
So like, you know, people want to, you want to be the change, right? Whatever. Right? So like for you,
Mahatma Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world.
exactly. So like for you, I know you mentioned a lot that like you actually try to take steps forward to make a change or to create more awareness about these issues so you can create a better future for your children. So like what are like what do you do personally to sort of try to like protect your family and
I'll
whatnot?
tell you straight up.
Yeah.
I recognized that I procrastinate.
Yeah.
I find that when I am bouncing up against something hard, like starting in the morning, starting getting going, or I'm coding something or I'm writing a blog post and I'm kind of like, I'm stuck. Muscle memory to open up TikTok. I think TikTok's so beautiful. The algorithm knows me so well. And it's really easy to be like, well, I'm just going to do this for a minute as I sort of like think about, what that post should be about or something, or why this build is failing. It has absolutely just trained my brain that way. And I was like, if you imagine a tug of war and it's for your life, it's for you doing anything with your life. And on one side, you have trillionaires hiring the best designers, the best behavioral psychologists on staff at Facebook, right? To make sure that you give your life over to them, right? That's one side pulling that. And it is a very clear value proposition that Mark doesn't feel he has to hide anymore. It is, hey, Oti, can I have your life? I'm going to sell it to this advertiser. I'll keep the money, but I'll give you some dancing cat videos. Is that cool? And he's straight up with it. He used to be like a little ashamed about it, like try and like dance and, shuck and jive around. It's garbage, right? In
Yeah.
reality, he's now going, that's our business model, dude. We absolutely try to steal everyone's life. And the better I do it, the higher the stock goes because we're selling more ads. So go me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
On the other side of that tug of war rope is you alone. So you're believing you can pull this tug of war and win, your life, your attention, do something with your life, become generationally wealthy on your own, right? And on the other side, it's like all these guys going, hey man, we want to make sure you do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So the only way in which I think I can affect that is I make a tool to help people focus, to help me focus. And it's simple as shit. It's like you run this website in the background while you work. It gives you 1,000 hours of scientifically designed focused music, right? Because I have a lot of friends who are film composers that could write stuff for me to best practices, right? If I pick up my phone, it gives me a nudge. So when I have that little TikTok moment of like, I'll just open TikTok for a minute, I pick it up. 5 seconds later, my little smart assistant in my laptop goes, Steven, do you really need to be on your phone? And it just gives me that choice of who do I want to be? Do I want to be that guy at 6 o'clock who's like, oh man, I was busy all day, but I didn't get anything done? Or do I want to be that guy who's like, hell yeah, let's go to dinner. I feel great. I did something,
Yeah.
And it has a website blocker. Same thing. You know what? I can specify what websites distract me. I know for some of our membership, it's like ESPN, NFL in season, MLB, whatever. For others, it's Amazon and Etsy. For some people that doom scroll. And then, you can set your own things. Hey, man, these are the 10 websites. Nudge me if I open them because I will waste my afternoon on them, right? And it's the same thing. A little pop-up comes up. You open Amazon, little pop-up goes, hey, Steven, it seems like Amazon's a distraction. Do you want to close this? Or do you want to keep using it? And it just gives you that little opportunity to say, who do I want to be? So that's what I do. I make a simple app that does that. And the people that use it just get more done. And they're happier.
That's great. What's the app called? How do people get access to it?
Oh, it's called, funny thing is, so we had a working title for this, right?
Yeah.
As we were developing this, and I've been working on this for like 6 years, had a bunch of friends help, like amazing journey, right? I'm a big believer in talk to your members, talk to your users. Like, how are we doing? What can we do better? What sucks? Tell me now what sucks. We can fix it. Like you talk to people. It's like your community trying to help each other. I'm trying to help people do something great. They're trying to help me do something great, right? So Tony, my partner in this, we, have been repeating this process. We're just going, Oti, how are we doing? So Laura, wifey, with whom we're having, the kid in like 8 weeks, right?
Yeah.
So we met in yoga. I met Laura when I had a startup that failed, my first startup that had not gone well. And I was depressed. I was ashamed. Bump into friends in LA at the grocery store. And the thing I dreaded was them going like, oh, how's it going, man? I'm like, I think I'm going to close my company. Like it didn't work. And it's just, so I moved to New York for 2 years, just got out, didn't want to bump into anyone. I felt just embarrassed and ashamed.
I hear that, man.
And depressed. And in that moment, met Laura. She was on the mat to my left in yoga. We got along great. And she met me at a time when I was not like, king of the hill, executive vice president here, vice president there. She met me at a time when I was just like, I suck. You know, like I'm trying to figure out what to do with my life. Like I'd never had a failure that bad
Yeah.
because I was like, I'd sold a company when I was 28. I was like, I'm really good at this. And then, you have a failure. You're like, wow, what happened?
Yeah.
You know? So I tell you that because yoga is a daily part of our life. When we had a working version of this, and I knew we needed a title, Laura and I went on our honeymoon. And of course, when you're big into yoga, Bali is a great place to go. I'm very lucky. I'm at a point in my life we can go to Bali and hang out for a couple weeks. So I was like, we were flying there. I said, this thing needs a real name. And I always loved Amazon because it was a strong name. It wasn't called like bookstore, in the early days. Or like Nike wasn't called like shoe store. You know what I mean? Like there's like Nike. And yet maybe you had to think a moment and be like, what is Nike? Oh, it's like that winged goddess of it. Oh, that's a cool, okay. What Amazon? That's kind of a strong, you know what I mean? Like it was that thing where it wasn't like flow state app or,
Yeah.
distraction blocker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was talking to Laura, I was like, while we're gone in Bali, I know no one from the company is going to bug me because they're like, Puri's on his honeymoon. Leave him alone. Don't ask him to approve the purchase order for the staplers or whatever, right? So I said, maybe this time we're gone, the universe will just speak to me. The muses will sing. I'll get like that name that's like Amazon or something weird and like has an interesting meaning. And she's like, I hope that happens. I said, when we, are there on the first day, would you mind if I just talk to 3 of our members? I'll just post in the group chat. Who is like 5 minutes? I just want to hear what's your favorite feature. She's like, go for it. I'm going to go to the pool. Take an hour or 2. I'll see you at dinner. Fine. So 3 people said, yeah. So we chatted and I tried to be respectful. Like, hey man, 5 minutes. Just Oti, thank you for being a member of the past year or 2. What's your favorite feature? Like, do you love the smart assistant that tells you to get off your phone? Do you love the music? Do you love the Pomodoro timer? What is it? The third guy, we were wrapping up and I was like, thank you for your, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. And he's like, Steven, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, okay, what's the right question? He's like, you should have asked me, why do I pay you? And I was like, dude, we charge like 30 cents a day. Like, I don't collect a paycheck for this. I do this for free.
Yeah.
Right? I just think the world needs this. And so Tony does it for free too. So I was like, okay, I didn't think that was a big deal because it's not like $100 a month or something. Why do you pay me? And he said, I found over the past year, I have 2 kinds of days. At 6 o'clock, I can be like, where the hell did the day go? Or at 3 o'clock, I can be playing with my kids. They're 2 and 4. He said, I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. I was like, wow, that's a really beautiful way to thank you for that. So I told this to Laura at dinner. I was like, I talked to this dude who's like more articulate than I am about what I'm doing. And I told her what he said. She's like, that's really good. Like, you should hire him. That's emotional. That expresses what you're trying to do better than like block the phone or, like block the website. And so we're going to bed. And Laura, is brushing her teeth and brushing her little teeth. And she looked at me. She goes, you wanted the universe to talk to you and give you a name? In yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms like, dharma, your duty in life, karma, prana, your life force. She's like, that dude described to you sukha. Sukha, which is like that happiness you feel when you're doing the thing you're meant to do and you're good at it. Like you can do it with ease. He's saying to you, he wants to have the experience of like being happy. He wants to be at 3 o'clock with his kids. She's like, that's what you shouldn't name your app after the path. Like you should name it after where you're going. She's like, there you go. So I looked at my phone, the Sukha company, the happiness company website was available, bought it for $14 that night from bed in Bali and went to sleep. And that's how we came to be called the happiness company, the Sukha company.
That's beautiful. That's such a great story too. Because there's so many things wrapped up in that I really buy that are like the spiritual aspect which is really great, but it's funny. Like, yeah, like you're 100% right. People, this is where my mind's going to. People fail to interview their client customers and figure out specifically why they come to them often. Right. And I think what you're expressing here too, a lot of founders have with something called product market fit. They create a product, they don't even realize its value to who they're trying to sell to. That's why you don't even really understand your ideal customer profile, right? But that's really interesting. Like the interesting thing about the application is that like it wasn't even about his time that's important. It's other people's time and like how valuable that is. My stupid salesman, I'm like map out the buyer journey. But it's like for him, it's like the inflection point basically is like my time is important, yes, but it's like my 2-year-old's time, my 4-year-old's time. It's innumerably valuable because I will never have back, right? So that's very interesting. I really love that story.
That is it. And that guy's still a member. I see him we have a little like coffee shop where you can like group chat. I see him in there, and every time I see him, I feel happy because I'm like, his kids must be what, 3 and 5 or almost 4 and 6 now. And I wonder what that's like for him because I'm going to have a kid and I want to have that 3 o'clock where I'm like, I'm holding my little fingers out and he's clutching, my little fingers as he learns to walk. I want to be there.
Yeah.
And I want to do a great job at work. I want to kill it. I want to, like, if I'm going to spend 6 or 8 hours, like, I want to kill it in that time and then feel the rest of the day I can be present with my kids
And I,
and correct their homework. At some point, I'm going to be correcting their science and math homework.
yeah.
And that's going to be super cool. I hope they don't suck.
Let me. No, they do. So let me ask you this question. This is basically what we're touching on, right? And you've had some bars, some fire, like some clips are gonna be amazing. But like, it's almost because I really like the one you're saying. I'm gonna take your information, sell it to advertisers, and in exchange, I'm gonna give you dancing cats, which is hilarious. Because if you just tell that to people, there's no way they wouldn't agree with that, right? And like the value you're providing back to the world is like a tool for people to get their presence back, like get back to reality. You know, is that a fair?
Get in control of your life.
Yeah.
If you don't control your life controls you.
Yeah.
And there are enough really smart, wealthy people who want your life.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
And I think the fundamental assumption, though, that I early in our conversation, I said, which is, I believe that we have something great we could do.
yeah.
And you have to believe that. Because if you don't, then scrolling through the reels and the Snap stories and the TikTok, it's a great option. If you believe like, hey man, my life's going nowhere. Like I'm working at 7-Eleven or wherever, Cracker Barrel, wherever, and it's like, there's no future for me.
Yeah.
If that's what you believe, then I get it. Then it's just like, what does it matter if I waste my life? But if you believe you have something to do in this world, find the allies that help you to do it. I'll tell you, going back to story structure, because, we talked about stories a lot. If you notice in a lot of those kind of action movies, in the first act, there's the world changes, right? Bad event happens, inciting incident, whatever you want to call it, right? So there's that thing of like, oh God, the ring has been stolen or whatever, right? At the end of that first act, when the hero's like, okay, reluctantly sometimes, I have to go on this journey to solve this, right? Sometimes they embrace it, sometimes they're the reluctant hero. What is the first thing that happens at the top of the second act? It is assemble the allies. They have to go around and find like, oh, what's Hulk doing? Is he available to help me? Oh, what's Gandalf doing? Whatever hell it is, right? And it's an important part of those stories, which is to say, okay, this earthquake happened in the world. Things shifted and changed. I've accepted I have to be part of it, but I need a team. So that assemble the allies, top of the second act, we're just one of the allies that's standing around waiting for people to go, hey man, actually, you know what? I think I do have a book I want to write. I do have an app I want to create. I do have a business I want to create. Can you help? And we're like, hell yeah, run this website in the background. It will help you block out those $1 trillion assholes who are trying to steal your life.
That's a beautiful message. Oh, wait, so how do you spell it again? Like, how do you spell the website name for people so people can get access?
Oh, website's super simple. It's with the Sukha company, which is TheSukha.co. CO for company, not COM, right? So the Sukha, SUKHA.co. And it means the happiness company.
Okay, that's perfect.
And you could, by the way, you can try it for 7 days for free. We made it no credit card because we didn't want to be one of those companies that's like, oh, Oti, if you forget to cancel, we're just going to bill you forever. You know what I mean? Like, we're like, no, if you try this, you're like, damn, every day I open this up, I have a better day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then help us pay the server bills. You can give us $10 a month. And if it doesn't work for you, you're free to go. You never have to worry about trying to figure out how to cancel and any of that stuff,
I think, that's beautiful. And I think that's something that's very necessary, definitely for me, but people I'm around as well too. Like my network definitely can have like a huge use for that.
Yeah.
We're all remote home dungeon folks.
Dude, I'm working right now on a new version of our website to really spell out, if you're working remotely, if you're a remote worker, here are probably the hard things about the distractions and stuff. Here's how we can help. And just make it super simple to go like, this is what we do. Because if you fundamentally believe you have something to do, we want to help you. That's why we're here.
That's great. That's perfect. You know what? How about we end on that? I think that's like a really nice one.
I'm down. Yeah. This has been an awesome chat, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we met. I'm glad you were like, hey, you know what? Let's have this conversation recorded. I was like, yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah. And for me, again, like obviously, if we can, I'd love to have you on the podcast again. But I think going back to what I was trying to say before, the crazy thing about this right now, why it's so valuable is that you have 2 weeks before 18 years.
I know, right?
So this is really great. I really appreciate it. I think you're doing something that's very important in the modern context, and it's not spoken on a lot, which is very unfortunate. So I love your message. I love you. I love your vibe, and I love what you're doing. Hopefully, I can do what I can to get like more people and more eyes your way. I know you're already killing it. Obviously, you don't need like my help over here, but
No, it is a village. This is the thing is like, I do believe in people, but I know we're going through a time right now when you can lose hope. You can say, wow, the rules are all being rigged against us. You know, it's going to be harder and harder to affect change. But the one thing that holds me up is you go, well, all I'm really responsible for is me. So if I take the right actions today, I don't necessarily have to think about like moving the entire country, moving the world in this direction. All I can do is, you know what? When I meet someone, treat them with respect. Hopefully that affects how they treat the next person.
yeah,
All I can do today is I I say I have a great book I'm going to write. Let me write one chapter. Then when I publish that book, other people might be inspired to go like, man, Oti did it. Maybe I can do it. You know? So it's just like, live for yourself, try and live as a model, be the change you want to see in the world. As you quoted the Gandhi line, like that's what it's about, especially in these dark times.
preach, preach. I love that. I
I
love that.
just
Okay,
saying, just saying.
that's perfect.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.